My ears are deaf, and yet I still seem to hear sweet nature's music and the songs of men. For I have learned from fancy's artisans how written words can thrill the inner ear, just as they move the heart. And so, for me, they also seem to ring out loud and free. During silent studies, I have learned to tell each secret shade of meaning and to hear a magic harmony at once sincere that somehow notes the tinkle of a bell, the cooing of a dove, the swift of leaves, the raindrops pitter-patter on the eaves, the lover's sigh, the thrumming of guitar, and if I choose, the rustle of a star.
More than 13 million Americans have severe hearing losses. They're all around. Teachers, business people, technicians, associates, and friends. They seem to be accepted in the mainstream of American life. But this has not always been true. This acceptance has come slowly through the years and has grown with America. Our story of deaf Americans begins in Raleigh, Massachusetts in the year 1679, a time when the deaf were considered little more than common animals. Amid the bustle and work required in early America, a man named Philip Nelson attempted to teach the art of speech to a deaf boy named Isaac Kilbourne.
If your father hadn't given you the job, you'd be where you belong, cleaning out a spittoon.
I won't take that. I'm a self-made man.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you accept the blame.
Good night, you scoundrels. I have some work to do at home.
Good night.
Do you know where he's off to?
No, what's up?
I heard he's been spending a lot of time with that idiot.
You mean Archie Kilbourne?
He ain't no idiot. He's deaf.
Is that right? He can't hear, can he?
Right.
He can't read, can he?
Right.
What are you getting at?
That Kilbourne kid. Can't hear, can't read, can't work. Hell, he can't understand anything.
I told you, he's deaf.
He's not only deaf, he's feeble-minded. He's a dummy and he ought to be locked up and kept away from decent folk. He's no more than a dumb animal.
What on earth is doing him?
That's exactly what I'd like to find out. It's not natural for a man to spend so much time with an animal.
What are you going to do?
Well, first, I'm going calling on the Reverend Smith. Then we're all going to pay Mr. Nelson a visit. Come on.
What on earth is doing him?
It's not natural.
Bill Norton! In the name of God, I ask to come in and you stop what you're doing.
Oh, it's you, Reverend Smith. Well, welcome to my home.
What are you doing, that boy?
Teaching him? Well, I'm trying to teach him how to speak.
Who do you think you're better than God?
What?
Isaac is deaf and dumb. If God let him to speak, he will not be deaf. He was born out the way at the punishment.
A punishment for what?
That's not for us to know. God works in mysterious ways.
But in the Gospel of John, the disciples asked Christ, Master, who did sin? This man or his parents, that he should be born blind? And Jesus answered, saying neither, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him.
And the Bible warned that the devil can quote scripture for his own purposes.
But Kilbourne's not being punished. He can't hear, that's all.
That's all? Who are you say that's all?
Judge not, and ye will not be judged. Condemn not, and ye will not be condemned. I'm only trying to help him. I want him to learn.
You want him to understand? That's what the devil told Eve in the garden. Eat this fruit. It will make you wise. Hey, use the devil's own words.
The devil's words. He must be a witch.
A witch? For the mountains, a witch!
Trap him.
Luckily for Philip Nelson, Reverend Smith was more open-minded than the witch burners in Salem. There was a full-scale church inquisition. The group found Nelson to be not guilty of being a witch. As for Isaac Kilbourne, he went on to learn a trade, married in the church, and raised a family. For more than 100 years after that time, the general beliefs of Americans were the same. The deaf were dumb. It was not until 50 years after the American Revolution that people's disbeliefs and suspicions against the deaf in America began to disappear. The place is now Hartford, Connecticut, the year 1679. Our story begins with a young man named Thomas Gallaudet. Gallaudet had tried several professions but had to quit them because of his ill health. Finally, he became a minister, but still he could not hold a job. One day, while sitting outside of his father's home, he was watching a group of children playing.
Teddy. Teddy. Who's that little girl over there?
Alex Goswell.
Dr. Cogswell's little girl.
Yeah,
Well, why isn't she playing?
she can't hear.
Can't she hear anything?
No, she's deaf and dumb.
Bring her over here. Maybe I can think of a game that she'd like to play. H-A-T. Alice. See? Hat. Hat. Okay. H-A-T. Hat. Understand? That's right. S-T-I-C-K. Stick. Understand? Stick. That's it. S-T-I-C-K. You? Alice. A-L I-C-E. Alice, you. That's it. Uh-huh. Good. Good.
Wonderful! How do you do it, Thomas?
Well, I was just...
We have been trying to teach the 74 years. Anything. We had all but given up hope. What do you do?
Well, I'm trying to tell you.
I know, Thomas. Please tell me.
Well, I was trying to amuse her while the other children were playing. But I wasn't getting anywhere. So I finally just gave her my hat to play with. I couldn't think of anything else to do. So while she played with my hat, I started to doodle in the dirt. And I wrote hat. But she didn't understand the connection. But after pointing to the word and then to the hat, well, she understood.
I can't believe it. Her mother would be excited.
I'm not sure if I understand myself. Do you mean that this is the first thing that Alice has learned?
No. She's very bright. She learned to do it herself, eat, take care of her own toilet, things like that. But we'll never be able to teach her anything that will help us communicate with her.
Well, can't you send her to a school that knows how to teach the deaf?
I would like nothing more to do that. I have been trying to fill to support the children, but I cannot find the right man to head up the process. And without right leadership, I cannot raise the money.
Well, what must a man like that do?
I've heard there's a school in England where they not only teach the deaf to read, but to speak as well. And I have a book from French to teach the finger alphabet and sign language. What I need is a man who can go to England and learn a technique and come back and establish a school for the deaf in America.
Gallaudet was intrigued with the goal of establishing the first school for the deaf in America. With money raised by Dr. Cogswell, he was soon on his way to England. He was anxious to learn how the English taught the deaf to speak. But even the best of intentions can be very frustrating. Finally, Gallaudet arrived in England.
But I want to teach the deaf also.
I'm terribly sorry, but our methods are held strictly confidential. We wouldn't want the riffraff to begin trifling in our territory, would we?
Then you won't teach me.
We'll teach you. But first, you must sign an oath never to divulge them or use them outside of our schools.
Well, how long would this take?
At least 5 years, possibly more.
By letter, Gallaudet explained to Dr. Cogswell what had happened. But there was also a happy note.
Dearest Dr. Cogswell, I met Abbe Sicard, the author of the French book of sign language. He has invited me to go to the Paris Institute. If you could send the extra money needed to study there, then I will go to France.
Dr. Cogswell sent the money, and soon Gallaudet found himself in Paris at the French Institute for Deaf Mutes.
Thomas Gallatin, you have a worthy ambition. We will be happy to teach you our French method.
Well, how long would this take? I have very limited funds.
That depends on you. I will give you individual instruction 3 times a week. Every day you will meet with my assistant. You will observe our way of method teaching in the youngest class, hand and fans, until you reach the highest class, until you reach. Hand is taught by Laurent Clerk.
Laurent Clerk? Well, isn't he the young deaf man who accompanied you to London?
Yes. Yes, you remember correctly. He was our student for 7 years, and now he's been a teacher for 8 years. Thomas, remember one thing. A teacher must always be patient.
I will try.
Gallaudet worked for 2 months, almost around the clock. He practiced until he could communicate with sign language, but he was running out of money. He had not yet learned everything at the school, and he still had to translate the sign language book into English. He was again facing defeat. But one day, he thought of a solution while speaking to his newfound friend, Laurent Clerk.
If I were to return home to America now, I would return as a failure. But I could do it. I could return home with my goals accomplished. If.
If what?
If only I could get a deaf assistant to go with me.
I'm sure there will be many deaf mutes ready to go.
But there is only one deaf man in all of France whom I would choose. You, Laurent.
But I have my work here. I know very little English.
But you could learn English. In America, you would be a pioneer. An example of the work that we want to accomplish. And you would bring first-hand knowledge of the teaching methods with you.
I think we should first talk to Argetsinger.
Before long, Gallaudet was on a ship sailing for America. With him came Laurent Clerk, the first educated deaf person to arrive in America. On the long voyage, the sign language book was translated into English. Upon their arrival in Hartford, they were met by Dr. Cogswell, anxious to get the school started. The scene is now a town meeting in Hartford, the year 1817.
And so, my fellow citizens, I appeal to help you establish first school for the deaf in America.
Those are wonderful words, Dr. Caswell. We all know how badly you want to see your school established. What's with your daughters being deaf? But I say it's a waste of the taxpayers' money. There's a reason for calling them the deaf and dumb. They just can't be taught.
I echo your respect for Dr. Cogswell. I'm sure he means well, but he's trying to go against nature. He created some of his children whole, some of them blind, and some of them deaf. We don't understand why, but I'm sure God had a good reason.
Why?
Maybe I could answer for you, Dr. Cogswell. I respect your concern for our tampering with nature, as you so kindly put it. But I assure you, I have only respect for God. For as you know, I myself am an ordained minister. Let me ask you a question. What must a man do to become saved?
He must acknowledge Jesus Christ to be the Son of God.
And how does a man arrive at that knowledge?
He must be taught.
I agree with you. But will you condemn the deaf to an everlasting hell because we, their brothers, have failed to teach them of Christ? You know that Jesus healed the deaf. He did not condemn them.
Even if you're right, Mr. Gallaudet, we'd still be wasting the taxpayers' money. We don't know how to teach them.
Maybe no one in America knows how to teach the deaf. But in Europe, many deaf people have been educated. I would like to introduce you now to Mr. Laurent Clerc. He has come all the way here from Paris, France, to show you that to be deaf is not to be dumb. I will now interpret what he says. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be here with such a distinguished group.
What was he doing with his hands?
You're witnessing a deaf mute communicating with sign language. Each sign has a meaning, just as each word that you say has meaning.
This is like a carnival. He can't do any more than say hello with that hand waving. What good will it do him?
I invite you, test Mr. Clerc's skills in communication and education. Through the goodness of God, he has learned to communicate, and he has learned of God. He proves that the deaf can learn.
Mr. Clerc, what is the meaning of the word gratitude?
Gratitude is memory from the heart.
What eternally?
Eternity is a day without yesterday, a day without tomorrow, forever.
Thank you, Mr. Lipreader.
What does it mean to believe?
To believe, I say yes with my mind. I say yes with my heart. I say yes with my mouth. But I do not see with my eyes.
Oh, very good.
I have one more question before we all jump on Dr. Coswell's bandwagon. Some of us think he can hear. Ask him this, just with your signs, and we'll see if he can understand.
The question was, what did Mr. Clerc think of his education? He said, before I became Abbé Sicard's student, I had a mind, but I did not think. I had a heart, but I did not feel. With his care, I rose above the class of brute to that of man.
Oh, good idea.
In 1817, under the leadership of Thomas Gallaudet and Lorenz Clerc, the first American school for the deaf was established in Hartford. The first student was Alice Cogswell, the girl who started Gallaudet on his quest to bring the deaf from a dungeon of darkness and ignorance into a world of light and knowledge. In only 4 years, enrollment grew to 128 students. Thomas Gallaudet married Sophia Fowler, one of his students. 50 years later, their son, Edward Gallaudet, started the world's first college for the deaf. It still exists in Washington, D.C., and is named after Thomas Gallaudet, the father of American deaf education. As the deaf were taught to read and communicate, they became more accepted by the hearing citizens of America. Soon there were deaf carpenters, machinists, shoemakers, and even a few teachers and professionals. But more than that, the deaf were able to communicate amongst themselves. By the mid-1800s, the deaf began a magazine especially for deaf Americans, the Deaf Mutes Journal. And by 1880, they were planning their first national convention to be held in Cincinnati. This convention was greatly influenced by one of America's first feminists, a deaf woman named Angeline Fuller.
Who ever heard of women attending a convention?
What's wrong with women attending a convention?
Well, it's just not done. We can't, well, we can't be ourselves.
You need not to try to hide the truth from me. It's well known what kinds of things go on at a convention.
Then you should understand why it's impossible for you or any other woman to attend.
On the contrary, you should understand why it's absolutely necessary for women to attend.
But how can I explain that to the other men?
That would be very simple. It only has been a short time that the deaf people have begun to take their places in the workforce of America. We are not understood, and in many ways we're still not tolerated. The eyes of America, and perhaps of the world.
That's true.
How can we afford to do anything that will not show us positive light?
You're right. I'll try and convince the other men.
Now that's settled. What about the petty bickering that's been going on among the program planners?
I don't understand you, Miss Angeline. First, you convinced me into letting women go to the convention. And now you bring up another reason why women shouldn't go.
Once again, the woman's touch may be needed with the atmosphere, and the contentions will quickly end.
You're right. Well, thank you, Miss Angeline. Good day.
I have one more thing before I'm through.
Now what?
There must be a church service on Sunday preceding the convention.
Now that is where I draw the line. The convention committee does not have the time to organize a church service.
I expected that would be the case, since the men are too busy to arrange for one. The ladies will be happy to. We are quite competent to arrange and conduct the services.
All right. Is there anything else?
No, I'm sure I've covered everything.
The Deaf Mutes Journal explained the role women would have at the convention. As expected, there were many opposing views. But one man, Mr. G.E. Fischer, wrote to the journal.
So, let us now meet in brotherly love. Yes, and in sisterly love. For are we not led to the slaughter by the weaker sex?
Miss Fuller met Mr. Fischer at the convention, and the couple were soon united in holy wedlock. But Angeline's liberating work did not stop there. Noting Gallaudet was an all-male school, she began campaigning for a college for deaf women. Her cry went out when Gallaudet began a fundraising drive to build a gymnasium. She wrote a sarcastic letter to the journal.
Neither the students of Gallaudet nor any other school for the deaf where signs are used for communication needs exercise of gym. Sign language provides enough muscular exercise.
We are here to get education. Do we want a woman around here to mess around everything?
All we women can do is bear injustice as philosophically as possible. After this, if any of the deaf women condescend to marry any of those men, it will be one of the grandest demonstrations of woman's angelic nature that the world has ever seen.
Angeline was unable to gather enough support to begin a college for deaf women. But in 1884, Gallaudet became one of America's first all-male schools to become coeducational. Education of the deaf was not the only thing that helped break down the walls of ignorance. America was leading the world in an industrial revolution. Technologies were gaining in leaps and bounds. Technologies that helped break down other barriers for the deaf. The place is now Massachusetts, the year about 1860. We will now join the family of Mr. Gardner Hubbard.
How is she, Doctor?
She will live, Mr. Hubbard. But I'm afraid the fever had caused her to lose her hearing.
You mean she's deaf?
Daddy.
She can still talk. She can't be deaf.
Of course she can talk, but she has only learned speech. But as the year passed, she'll begin to figure out how speech sounds. Then she'll slowly lose her ability to speak.
That was a tremendous shock to Mr. Hubbard. He investigated all aspects of deafness, trying to find a way to help his daughter. He learned about the American School for the Deaf and the success they were having with sign language. He also learned about the oral method of education for the deaf being taught in England and Germany.
If my daughter can speak now, then there's no reason why she should forget it, especially when Europeans are teaching people how to speak who have never heard.
Mr. Hubbard devoted his life to the establishment of a school for the deaf that taught the oral method. It was established in Northampton, Massachusetts in the year 1867 and was named after John Clark, the man who donated the land. 5 years later, a young teacher of the deaf, Alexander Graham Bell, came to the school. He attempted to teach visible speech. It combined lip reading with the feeling of neck vibrations. Mabel Hubbard was his prized pupil.
Bell, if I could only make something, a diaphragm of some kind that would amplify the vibration, so they could be easily felt, then I will have the shut.
They worked for hours, both in class and out. Their work led to the invention of the telephone in 1867 and their marriage in 1877. The telephone opened the way for the amplified hearing aid, but the first models were too heavy to carry. Today, many models are completely unnoticed as they hide behind the ear or in eyeglasses. Because of Bell's work, the deaf who can benefit from the amplified hearing aid have entered the hearing world. Many of them don't seem to be deaf. It was also during the late 1800s that the first American deaf person was involved in a trial. A murder had been committed in New Mexico, and the only witness was a deaf mute.
Hey, what are you doing with my girl?
It seemed like an open and shut case to the prosecuting attorney until they got to court.
And furthermore, I shall prove that this man killed the victim, Judd Gray. The murder was witnessed by this man.
The witness will now take the stand.
Say your name.
Your Honor, the witness is deaf. He doesn't understand what he's supposed to do.
Write for him so he can be sworn in.
Your Honor, he can't read either.
Well, how is this court supposed to communicate with this man?
The witness may be deaf, but he was an eyewitness to the murder, and he can act out what happened for the jury.
Objection! My client has the right for fair trial. It can't be fair when the only witness refuses to swear to tell the truth.
But he doesn't refuse to tell the truth. He doesn't understand the legal processes. The facts remain. He can clearly demonstrate what happened and who the killer is.
Objection sustained. The witness can only take the stand under oath.
But he doesn't understand that.
Do you have any other witness?
None, Your Honor.
Then I declare this case dismissed.
Of course, that couldn't happen today. We're more enlightened. But the fact is, little more than 10 years ago, an Illinois judge declared that the deaf could be tried and otherwise participate in court, even though they might not understand the proceedings. We now move into the 20th century. The deaf are being educated and are taking their place in the working world. Many barriers have been broken down, but no advancement can be made without a struggle. Let's watch as a young deaf woman attempts to get a driver's license.
Here you are. Over there. Keep your eye on that one, Miss Reed.
She's weird. She didn't say a single word while she was up here.
Cat got her tongue? She's probably just nervous.
We'll soon see. $100%. Not bad. Okay, what's your name? What's your name? What? Are you deaf? I can't give you a driver's license. I can't give you a driver's license. You have to be able to hear to be able to drive. No. Boy, we get all kinds in this place.
Look at my driver's test.
100%? Wow! I didn't know they could give you a driver's test.
I never knew a deaf person could drive. So I was license.
They wouldn't give it to me. I passed my test, but they wouldn't give me a license.
They say it's against the law for the deaf to drive. They say we're too dangerous.
Who says?
The insurance companies. They won't insure the deaf to drive. So the state says we're too dangerous.
That's not fair.
Just because we can't hear, they don't think we can do anything.
Well, can you blame them? They don't know what it's like to be deaf. If we could only get one insurance company to test us, then we'd know if we were safe drivers.
Conversations like this were happening all over America, but no auto insurance company would test them. Finally, the deaf decided to do something for themselves. They organized and established their own life insurance company, the National Fraternal Society for the Deaf. Then the NFSD influenced auto insurance companies to accept deaf drivers. We now move to a convention of the NFSD.
We must fight and influence automobile insurance companies.
Yeah, right.
We must prove that the deaf are careful drivers.
Yeah.
We successfully got life insurance. Now we will successfully get automobile insurance.
Right.
We'll show them that the American way is the deaf way. Right.
Conversations like that were happening all over the country. But there were many surprising developments. The deaf proved that they were better drivers than the hearing. They had fewer accidents. These statistics opened the way for the deaf not only to get driver's licenses, but other services as well. And it helped other handicapped individuals prove that they were willing and able to care for themselves the same as anyone. The lives of everyone in the civilized world have been influenced by the deaf. To give you just one example, let's look at sports. A man named William E. Hoy, one of the best baseball players in history, was signed as center fielder for the Chicago White Sox, but at first he had trouble at bat.
Okay, hold on, let's go, babe. Good eye, good eye. Right. Come on, hold on, let's keep your eye on the ball. Right. Nice dry, babe. Right, straight, you're out. Okay, let's dry. Point. Okay. Oh, time out. Time out, umpire. I guess they didn't tell that Horny is deaf. You got Horny? Horny has an idea. He said, if the pitch is a strike, you might want with the right hand to strike one. You know, so strike two, you know, with the finger. Oh, and they strike three, more do the thumb stay out. So that would be easy for him. Yeah, that's right.
And
Oh, boy. Go. Thank you. Come on.
Soon Hoy had developed a whole series of baseball signs. When the fans caught on, they loved it. It meant they could understand the calls without straining to hear above the noise. Signs for baseball are now universal, as are signs for almost every other sport in the world. Deafness also has its advantages. Here's the behind-scenes story about a Life magazine scoop that had every journalist in Washington, D.C. baffled.
Guys, have you seen this week through the Life magazine?
No, what's wrong?
What's wrong? There's a story about Queen Elizabeth. Attended last week football game between Maryland University and North Carolina. That's what's wrong.
So, this is the Queen's first trip to America. There's been stories about her in every magazine across the country. But you don't understand. For some reason, no reporters were allowed near the Queen. Not during, before, or after the game.
But look, right there in black and white, it's exact quote what the Queen said all through the game.
But I kept my eyes on her all that day. There were no reporters near her.
I don't know.
How'd Life magazine get the scoop?
I don't know. But I'm disappointed.
Life was never a publication of missing the opportunity of beating its competitors. When the announcement was made that no reporters would be with the Queen during the football game, Life really began to work.
Mr. Panara. Mr. Bob Panara.
Yes.
I'm happy to meet you. I'm with Life magazine, and we have a problem that we believe that you might help us solve.
Well, how can I help solve one of your problems?
As you know, Queen Elizabeth will be visiting in Washington, D.C. in a few days.
Yes, I read about that.
Life magazine is covering her in great detail. But there's one area that we just can't cover.
What's that?
The Queen's first football game.
What?
She will be attending her first American football game during her visit. We'd like to know what she thinks of the game and what her reactions are.
That would be interesting.
That brings us to a problem. For some reason, the Queen doesn't want any reporters around her during the game.
I don't know how I can help you.
We'd like to have you Lipreader and tell us what she says.
I don't know about that. Really.
Oh, it's perfectly legal. We shut that out.
Still, lip reading is very inaccurate. Only about 40% of the English language can be read on the lips. I'd be guessing most of the time.
Perhaps you could get another deaf student to assist you. And if you both independently thought that the Queen said something, then I assume it would be pretty safe.
Well, that is an idea. I do have one student who is an excellent speech reader.
Then that's settled.
Oh, wait a minute. Me? Read the lips of the Queen of England? I'd never get close enough.
That was the next point that I wanted to bring up. We have a mind to erect a platform directly opposite from the Queen. And you could carefully watch through high-powered telescopes.
But she'd see us.
No, you'd be 200 yards away. She'd never notice you.
On the day of the game, Bob Panara and a student, Elton Silvers, were high on a platform staring at the Queen through telescopes.
How many men are on each team? I feel like kicking that ball myself. Why are the goals behind the lines on each end of the field?
Even Prince Philip's lips were red when a Maryland University player broke out of the pack and ran for a touchdown.
Oh, man, look at that player go!
Entire game, and even through halftime, Bob Panara kept his eyes glued on the Queen. When the game was finished, he had to ask which team had won. Bob Panara was then whisked to the airport, flown to New York City, and there helped to match quips with pictures taken during the game. An interesting note to our story. Shortly after that time, Bob Panara was instrumental in making the decision that lip reading through telescopes was an invasion of privacy. Things seemed to be going pretty well for the deaf until the early 1950s. America was again leading the world in a revolution, a scientific revolution. Changes in lifestyles were happening overnight. Low communication and non-skilled jobs were being replaced by technology. In the early 60s, a survey was taken to find out what jobs the deaf were fulfilling in the new society. It was shocking to learn no new changes for the deaf had occurred since the late 1800s. The scientific revolution had left them far behind. Something had to be done quickly before it became impossible for them to catch up. Far-sighted individuals, both hearing and deaf, worked together to find a solution to the mounting problem, and soon a total new concept in education for the deaf emerged. They envisioned a new kind of school where the deaf could get the scientific skills required for the job market, a place where the hearing and the deaf could integrate and work side by side in jobs requiring greater communication skills, and a place where research in deaf education could be done to share new techniques with the world. They envisioned NTID.
Because it heard the silence in our hearts. NTID became a daring future that prophesied new worlds for our people, that became an elevated goal whose many followers held high the torch for learning bright and all the world to see.
NTID. Its time in life arrived. The hearing and the deaf to integrate. Together living and together sharing. And from each other learning, understanding their heart's desires, their similar ambitions, that silent wall break open, and total communication successfully join.
And theirs became the challenge and the responsibility to enter that great world and dissolve each other's fears, prejudice, narrow-mindedness. Never show enmity, but an open heart. Through many experiences of education in various specializations, choose mine alone and successfully embark.
Summing up the expectations of all our people, today we join to offer honor to the dreamer and that dream continuing bright, to the spirit and the goal of new ideas, to the promise of the great America, our open opportunity in RIT.